Hey, welcome back everybody to Iconic Rod and Custom and episode 5 of Mighty Mouse. As you can see, we've taken the doors and other panels back off of this. Today, we have to cut the firewall out. We're going to start putting the front suspension together so we know exactly how wide we're going to have to make the cab of this and the other panels. Now, we're going to use a plasma cutter after we get the suspension in. Then we got to make sure we're centered up on it, obviously, and the spindle goes right down the center of the wheel opening. So we're going to show you all that, and hopefully we can get some cab mounts made up, and we'll do that on a computer. We'll design them and then cut them out on the plasma cutter. So stay tuned.
We'll start out by removing a lot of this metal we're not going to use anyways for the where the inner fenders are at. We're going to make room for the front suspension. So as you can see here, Scott's just going to town cutting all this stuff. We decided we're going to leave most of the firewall in for now. I'm going to work on fabricating a chassis table so we can get it moved off of this fabrication table and get it lowered to a more reasonable work height after we get the suspension all set up, lined up where we want it, and cut some of this excess metal out so we can lighten it up to move it off of this table. So you'll see here in a little bit that I'll fabricate up a table while Scott is on vacation, and then I go on vacation the week he comes back. So that's why we had a couple weeks downtime without filming and getting this episode up. So we should get back on track though pretty soon. Next up is the upper spring and shock cups. He's going to get them all tacked into place there so we can add our steering knuckles on so we know where to center everything up at. So in case you didn't realize, we're using that Mustang 2 front end setup on this, and they're very popular. They handle real well, and a lot of hot rodders use these. But this is the setup we're going to use as well. I have tubular lower control arms for it. I'll probably get the uppers as well, but we'll just use the stock ones for the moment, just so we can get everything set up. There is no difference in the length in those for the standard size. So as many of you know, it takes a lot of time to mock things up, and you might have to do that 10, 20, even 30 or 40 times. Put things together, take them apart on a build such as this. It's constant checking your work and fitment, so there's always something to do. So it gets tedious at times and repetitive, but it's something that needs to be done. Once we have the upper control arms in place, we'll grab the steering knuckles and the spindles and put those on. Sometimes it takes two people, especially on these new ones where the bushings are really tight in the control arms. Got to use a little leverage once in a while. So once we have the knuckle and spindle on, we'll put the hub assembly on there. And you'll be able to see here that the body needs to come forward just a little bit to get it centered up in there so it looks right. And here is the chassis table that I built the week Scott was on vacation. I got a bunch of things done. Actually, a couple other vehicles were in the shop I had to take care of, and I built this chassis table so we can get that chassis and body off the fabrication table and over onto this. So now comes the fun part. We're going to split this bad boy into two pieces. Actually, it's going to be more than two because we're going to take a center section out of the roof. This will leave the peak that meets in the center of the windshield, and we'll also do that with the firewall itself on the cowl panel. Take notice to how this center piece curls up once it was cut into two. It curled up because of the pressure on it from being English wheeled and the contour of the roof itself to help strengthen and stabilize the metal. So we'll get to that here in a little later. Well, Scott's cutting around the rear window opening. We're going to keep that same size window in the back. So we're cutting that section completely out of it before we split the rear of the cab. Now on to the cowl panel, the firewall, and the dash. We're keeping the center section on the dash. We're going to try to keep that original area where the speedometer and other gauges were. And there it is, crown jewel, the dash. That's one of the important features of the Morris Minor and the Mini Coopers as well. That great big cluster in the middle. Now, if you was watching, paying attention, we had this thing braced up really well. It didn't move as we were cutting it, splitting it down the middle. Now we're going through and we cut all the bracing off there so we can just take each half and set it on the floor such as you just saw. So now it's time to put that front cross member in there, and we're going to make the corners rounded on that. And once this is all done, it'll look like it was just meant to be there. One solid piece that flows. The corners are going to be nice and round. Aesthetics, that's what it's all about. When you look at things like this, the quality of work and the aesthetics of the whole build. You know, some people just don't realize how much work is involved in a custom build such as this one. You know, you're watching a 20-minute video or even an hour TV show on Motor Trend or something like that. You know, they build a whole car in an hour. Well, you know, that's not the case, but. Scotty will get this all cleaned up for welding, and then we'll get it all squared up, make sure everything's perfect on it before he tacks it in. You might have taken notice of that bottom plate that we put on there that runs from the right rail to the left rail. I actually cut that out on the plasma table, and we have that clamped on the bottom to ensure that this front cross member stays flush and acts as an extra support for it. You can see it there clearly right now. It's still clamped on. So he's checking and double checking and triple checking actually the fit, and he'll grind and put everything back on there again and square, make sure it's square and all the gaps are fitting just right before he even tack welds it on there. Once he has it all tacked on, we'll take the clamps off, and I use the torch. Actually, I'm going to heat up these ends, and we're going to bend them in actually to roll that corner in on that side. Actually, both sides will get done that way. We'll roll the one tab in, and the other is going to need cut to shorten it up so it meets it, and then that'll get welded as well, ground down, and as you'll see here in a little bit, it's like it's all one piece. You can see how these corners are looking more rounded already. You'll be amazed at what you can do with metal. Metal is clay, they say. You know, it's just another substrate, and it's only limited to your imagination what you can do with it. And here they are, finished up. We'll weld the bottoms of them once we get the chassis done and flip it over. We'll have a lot of stuff on the bottom side we'll have to weld up and dress up, but these look great. Well, we'll see you on episode 6. Talk to you later.